Hi, you're watching a very special recording of Agenda. Usually I'm in the studio, but for great topics, great knowledge, and great speakers, I do come out. And we're humbled to be here at the 37th IAHR. It's a congress, it's a world congress that brings together, engineers, water specialists, and people like that. But the more pertinent point to me, that's why I'm willing to come all the way here, is what's in it for us, the layman? Because the world as we know it is changing. It was from a very high-ranking UNESCO official that I interviewed that said that at the rate that we are consuming things, we're going to need 4 Mother Earth to sustain. Consumptions are being looked at, availability of resources, food security, for example, and like in the previous interview that I've done, I always like to quote the chairman at that time of Nestle, Peter Lemaitre-Brabeck, at the World Economic Forum, who says, the next World War, if it ever happens, is going to be because of the scarcity of water, especially clean water for consumption. With that, I'm so glad to have right in front of me, literally, Professor Shabahan. Thank you so much for making time. You are representing United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, for this region, especially Asia Pacific. You look at more than, 48 countries around this region. Countries. But one thing that links all these countries together, if I put to it, would be water. In this region, the civilization started hundreds of years ago based on water mobility, and they were trading. Then came the colonial forces, then they were forced to be agrarian. Again, water played a very important role. And then now, moving forward in a very open and globalized economy where there's no such thing as a country can keep hold to its resources anymore. I just interviewed the main celebrity speaker at this Congress, and he was from Google, not from the traditional sectors that you would have thought. And the role of big data has shown that geospatial information goes across and beyond any national borders. So since UNESCO look beyond national boundaries, look at civilization, look at the world global population and regional population, I want to put this to you. Would water and availability of clean water be one of the main pertinent issue for this region, the Asia-Pacific region, which includes Southeast Asia, at this moment in time going forward?
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking time to interview
me.
It's
a pleasure.
This is a very special conference, first of all. It brings together engineers, but also it has a very important link with the policy people as well. And because it's happening in Malaysia, it's a special thing for Malaysia as well, because the people from all over the world, more than 1,200 professionals are here, and they are top of the top in the field. Now, coming back to the question of water. Water is life. Our bodies, most of them, is water. More than 70% is water. But how crucial is water for the Asia Pacific and for the world? As you said, there may be wars about water, which is very true. I come from originally Pakistan, and I am a citizen of Australia as well. So I would like to relate there and the work we are doing in Malaysia here. So I know, being part of a farming family from Punjab, no water means no food, no life. The whole year would be without anything. So people can even lose their lives on the rights of water. So it's very, very precious to everybody. But think now about the availability of water. Availability of water is not uniform for everybody. Availability of water is linked with our hydrological cycle, as we say, the rainfall, where it occurs, how it flows, who has the right to hold it, and water is crossing many boundaries. Scientific, but also very importantly, the geopolitical boundaries. Yes. And if you think about the situations between countries who are not so friendly, even sharing of data is such a big problem. Sharing of water is a bigger problem.
Correct.
So now we have all these kind of geopolitical settings in which we have the uneven distribution of water. On top of that is the climate change, which is also driving this cycle in a way that maybe there are new haves and have-nots. And then you have the complication with the oceans as well, as the sea levels are rising and the saline waters are moving in. So the issue has become much, much more complicated. It's not a scientific issue only. It's a geopolitical problem where you need to think about many other dimensions, the social, the economic dimensions, and the dialogue between societies, and what have we learned from our civilization. So maybe that's where the water has become a very special topic to the survival of humanity.
Why do we have to discuss water exclusively by itself? Why can't that naturally come into the day-to-day governance of a country and district or city? Why can't it be the usual diplomacy that settles this matter? Why do we have to have a congress such as this to look at specific native to water issues, technology, know-how and expertise?
Water itself is a fascinating subject from many dimensions. So if you think of the scientific dimensions of it, there's some water which we can see, and there is a lot of water we don't see.
Okay.
The water which is on the surface and how it flows, what we call through our watersheds into our rivers, many of us can see and feel, but what is inside, we don't know. What kind of chemicals are there? What kind of bacteria is there? What kind of viruses are there? How do we interact with this? But very importantly, also the water which is underground, which we really do not understand that very well. And unless we start bringing the scientific knowledge together, this will only lead to debate with the fights without having the scientific evidence. So that's why this kind of conference is very important, but water is everyone's business.
All right.
So our challenge is, how do you create a transparent system of making decisions where the governments feel comfortable, local people feel they are empowered, and very importantly, the scientific knowledge, the data is really the right knowledge and data to help communities make these tough decisions about water.
Correct.
So that's why it's very complex.
So an open approach with data being shared beyond boundaries should be the thing. But as we have seen in the world as we know it today, the more we have open global trade and industry, there'll always be apprehension for the local ecosystem. We've looked at Europe and Brexit. We've looked at the rise of President Donald Trump, and we've seen how it's more populist to go and protect what we have first before we look at a joint humanity approach. So if water is going to go down that same road, how do you get past geopolitical imperative? How would this kind of Congress argue for a different narrative, for a new discourse?
Yeah, that's where let's try to untangle this a little bit.
Sure.
The rain which falls on my land, is it mine? Can I share it with somebody else? If I have a farm, should I capture everything? So that's where we need to start thinking about human rights and the rights for the environment. You know, United Nations General Assembly has approved water being a human right. It means water should be available to everyone, free of charge basically, but of course there is a cost in transporting and providing. So now the challenge is, how do we actually implement such a human rights-based approach? And how do we make sure there is an equity? Let's take the example in Malaysia. Let me try to correlate with the issues, let's say, in the Langat River, which is not far away from Kuala Lumpur.
Sure.
And how does this whole watershed works, how the water will move, how the urban users are linking with it from the use, but also they are polluting as well. But then the issues of agriculture and its related issues. Then you have the Putrajaya lakes and how do you share the amenities and the values. Water has become a very important and precious commodity in this whole world. And that's where, coming back to the question, which is that it would be really wonderful world if everyone shares their data and the water is distributed on equity basis and there is empowerment of communities. But unfortunately, because of so many of these interests and the groups and the distribution, it is a very big issue from the point of view of the legal and the access. And that's where we need to have a scientific basis and the rights-based approach to bring these issues together.
Maybe where politicians has not moved so fast. scientists, engineers, and water experts have gotten together like this. And maybe you can share your own opinion of the good things, the blue skies achievement that we have gotten because we have shared data and knowledge on the engineering, the hydrological aspect, and also the water systems and the expertise, for example. That we'll discuss after this short break. And remember, this is thanks to Redact USM that we are able to speak to great professors like Shahbaz Khan. Right after this, we'll continue. We are very proud at AWANI to be able to be on the sideline of a very important congress, the 37th IAHR. You know, this congress, it puts together a lot of experts, especially the engineering experts and also water experts. But more importantly, it looks at the sharing of knowledge and data on water management, both surface and underneath and everywhere else. So for the issue of water, I think through mechanisms like this, the experts, the scientists, the engineers, they have put together and they have made for a lot of good achievement. If you can share with us some.
Yeah, I would call it, it's like scientific diplomacy. So before we really enter into the difficult political dialogue, we need to have scientists starting to share and starting to talk to each other. You cannot understand a watershed unless you have the data across and you have the knowledge of the underground water as well. Mm-hmm. And water does not follow any political boundaries. Correct. Water does not follow any religion. Mm-hmm. Water does not follow any certain kind of philosophy. Water is linked together through the hydrological cycle. And as the inhabitants of this planet, along with the other environmental uses, we need to be able to share it in a fair and equitable way. The first point for starting towards that journey is to share knowledge, share information, but very importantly also to get rid of the digital kind of divide between the countries which know more and the countries which know less. The biggest, I think, advancement in the scientific arena is now we can see the Earth from the skies with the satellites. Okay. And satellite data has made it possible for us to understand how the catchments look like, how the elevations are, what are the land uses, and then also we have now the ability to be able to predict and to be able to map the rainfall using satellites as well. Yes. So that actually helps us to go beyond political boundaries. So that's bringing the scientists together, but also the scientific methods themselves. Mm-hmm. How do you visualize a river? How do you start understanding what kind of soils are linked together? How does water move into these systems? It's not that somebody is sitting in a very, let's say, least developed country and somebody is sitting in a very advanced country. Only advanced country can access this knowledge. This knowledge is available with the power of internet and the power of computing, and such conferences are helping people to start understanding, build a common base. So once we have the engineers, the scientists equipped with this knowledge is going to help us to scale up, to help bridge these boundaries and to have these dialogues which are intercultural dialogues, the dialogues which are on the basis of fairness and equity, and very importantly the role of law and policy and international law, international environmental law, international water law, that will help us move forward in a positive direction. Already there are very, very good examples where nations like on Mekong River, this is considered to be one of the success stories in sharing and managing water. Indus Basin Treaty between India and Pakistan, that has also a lot of success, or the way we are managing water on the Nile River. So I think the world is moving towards better management of water because of better data and because of better scientific cooperation.
The bad fact is, maybe in the White House it's different, but for the rest of us, climate change is here. We need to do adaptations now. I mean, I've interviewed modern farmers from Australia who said the Murray-Darling area is no longer like what it was. So they're moving out of it. And there are people even here in Malaysia that says that their yield is not as good as before anymore. So if it's already here, if we're really struggling to even maintain what we have in terms of farming output, so why wouldn't the food security really be an upfront issue rather than just now letting it to the market forces to look at supply and demand? Because 7 billion people need to be fed, and Asia has what? Asia Pac has 4 billion.
Yeah, it's more than 60% of world population.
So where are we going to get all this food output, you know?
This is a very, very big challenge for us. The climate change impact on food security, on energy security, and very importantly, the disasters, the extremes, both the floods and the droughts. So it's beyond doubt now, and in Asia Pacific especially, I actually presented to SIMIO, the Southeast Asian Ministers Organization, the centers, and I'm getting a lot of follow-up from teachers. How do we bring it to the school level for this kind of understanding? Simple fact is, the tropics where we are, they are expanding. The glaciers are melting much faster than what we ever thought about. So sea level rise, but also the acceleration of the hydrological cycle is such that agroecological systems are disturbed in a very, very strong way. As you mentioned, Murray-Darling, where I personally worked as well, or if you think about the bigger Australia, if you think about producing citrus, like, citrus needs certain temperatures for chilling, otherwise it wouldn't be even yellow. Rice needs certain days of sunlight, otherwise you cannot grow rice. Similarly for maize and other crops, you have issues. The issue number one is the uncertainty and risk associated with farming is becoming bigger. On top of that, if there is less rainfall in many areas, which is becoming very true, and if there are hotter temperatures and the crops need more water, the water will simply be not there. So what do we do? Should we think about only certain areas growing food and they are going to supply us? What are the issues related to the national food security, national water security? These challenges we cannot deny anymore. So from a solutions point of view, we need to rethink about national development as well as the policies for the 5-year plans. But that's where also, you know, one thing which is really very big and missing, and Malaysia also needs to move in that way. Like Malaysia has invested very heavily into the education blueprint, but also from natural resources blueprint point of view. We need investment into science, technology, innovation for people to understand. And also on top of that, if there is no investment into climate change research, how we are going to provide the local customized knowledge which is driven by the needs of that particular country? That's what we are missing now. And that's where we need the science to move forward.
Thanks to REDAC USM and the 37th IAHR Congress, Professor Shahbaz is here. My premise and question before the break.
Education is starting from our birth until to the death. That's what is really our education. And if you really think about this question of education and water management and climate change and the issues facing our society, we have to have a fundamental change in the way we educate our people. We need to create a kind of sense of ownership in the environment we belong. The education is not from the point of view of taking the degrees only. Education is not from the point of view to have a living. Education is for life. Let's go back to the civilization. Let's go back to the example of the Angkor Wat. And I want to add 2 examples from culture here. One for Mohenjo-Daro, which is a very important part of the Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley civilization survived and thrived because of the Indus waters. And there was a wonderful sanitation system, same level and better than even many places in the world right now. What happened to that civilization? The civilization suffered because of what we call a climate shift at that time. The rain which was falling over there, the water they were able to manage, that water started falling far, far away to the east, and they have to abandon because they didn't have the knowledge to be able to cope with the changed conditions as a society. That's why the society did not survive. Let's come to Cambodia. you have one of the most interesting World Heritage,
Correct.
the Angkor Wat. Then you have the Tonle Sap, which is a very interesting lake link with the Mekong River basin. And then you have the Siam Reap. But now if you think about the modern day challenges now, with such wonderful heritage, everybody wants to come to Siam Reap. Wonderful. When they come there, they need to use a lot of water. And from where it is coming? It's coming from the groundwater. And then is the issue that the foundation of the Siam Reap are in trouble, because if you dewater, then the whole structure will crumble.
Right.
And you have the issue related to the quality of the Tonle Sap as well. So how do we change the way we live? Education is the way. We have to educate, first of all, the local society in understanding the important link between water, between heritage, between environment and the wider system. We need to educate our visitors. We need to educate our tourism departments. Think bigger than just the dollars. Think bigger than just the short-term gains. How do we create a society which is a sustainable society? How do we bring the curricula for education to take care of the local river, own a local system, be part of the ecosystem, and then also link globally? That's where now in UNESCO we have what we call the global citizenship education.
Okay.
And that education is not only at the community level, not only at the primary level, not only at the secondary level. Global citizenship education means that we are part of a much bigger system. Take a systems thinking. What is our water footprint? What is our carbon footprint? How do we live? What are our responsibilities? How do we take care of ourselves? And how do we take care of the generations to come?
Correct.
So I think if you start thinking in these terms, and the way science, technology, engineering, and mathematics need to go, the fundamental way of bringing skills to society, bringing better individuals, better citizens, they need to have a much rounded values-based education, and to have engineers who are also part of understanding of the cultures, the people who in science and technology who also understand the religious and the social values, and the people who are able to think bigger than themselves and also think about the virtual flows of water, the trading of the commodities, and to think about leaving no one behind and being part of a society where everyone has a fair and share part of the action. And that's why these kind of conferences are important, because we have started to come to a forum, more than 60 countries, that we start understanding that we have a common future and we have one planet. And if we spoil that, there are only two options. Either we go to another planet, we invest into rocket science, or we just perish. So it's better for all of us to become sustainable, and to become sustainable, we need to know where we are and how do we behave on this planet.
Only UNESCO can put it that way. It's the magnanimity of the animal stars ahead of us that should see all of us, not just the STEM. But now people are saying STEAM, you must put the arts and science into science. And but I want to end with this. When I was small, there's this sort of a tiny version of the mackerel called ikan kembung, and it costs just less than 1 ringgit Malaysia maybe per kilogram. Now it's nearly 20. And the Straits of Malacca we do not control who runs through it. It's half of the cargo of the world passes through it, but sometimes they just clear the sludge within the tight waterway, and that affects flora and fauna also. And we used to think that if we keep to ourselves, we do not fight with anyone, we could continue living as we are. And that was my grandfather's time, because he did not go to any school, because there was no school within walking distance, but he was man of the land. If he goes out in the morning and say, today we're going to go fish from the freshwater waterways. Then he went out a few steps, smell the environment, look at the clouds, see where and the strengths of the wind are coming from. No. We go and get protein from catching the birds, because he would have this entrapment that he has already put on. So we actually already have the local wisdom.
Yeah.
But why is it that when we go further ahead now, that we're forgetting all this local wisdom concept, and we're straight away sometimes looking at big, huge consultants to make us through? Will not be answered by you today. That's all the time I have. But I want you to give us just one thing. one single one-liner, what's the hope for us with such huge task in front of us?
Our hope is we are very innovative and we will find solutions for our survival.
Thank you so much, Professor Shabahan. I purposely coined the ending to have a question in it so that Professor will come back again to Kuala Lumpur. And thank you so much for making the 37th IHR such a wonderful place to be at. Even though I'm not an engineer or water expert, I could feel the love of humanity here. And that's all the time we have. Send in your own views to all the social media platforms that we have, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or download our iOS and Android application, and you can critique and watch shows like this live on your favorite mobile gadget. Thanks to Redact USM, and we'll see you maybe, hopefully, if Redact bring us AWANI to the 38th IAHR Congress next year. Thank you, good night and goodbye. Thank you.